as I'm reading through chapter 10 of Craig's book, I start to journal, well, how many external stressors have I had in that case, the timeline was 14 months. It was 29. And it blew me away. Everything from my father-in-law dying to navigating his funeral, which is never easy, to my parents both having significant health challenges, my dad being diagnosed. Welcome to the Carey Nieuwhof Leadership Podcast. It's Carey here, and today something very different. This one's personal. And sometimes we lead on the outside, but there's a struggle going in on the inside. So today, I want to share what's happened over the last year and a half. Honestly, it's been one of my most stressful years in life and leadership in 2 decades. I burned out in 2006. That was different. That was like internal stress, but I've had 29 stressful events in 14 months, a major health crisis. And so in this episode, my good friend, Sean Morgan from the Leaders in Living Rooms podcast interviews me. And we were going to originally put this on his show, but he decided to allow me the privilege of sharing it with you. And there's no sugarcoating, okay? We talk about, how external turmoil, inner drive, and unexpected diagnosis kind of all collided in my life and what I had to modify to ensure I didn't burn out again. So anyway, I do this mostly so that you can see sometimes it looks like everything's going great on the outside. This as a leader, but on the inside, you're dealing with all kinds of stuff. What do you do with that? Well, that's what we're going to talk about very transparently. Now, I wrote a book about the internal stressors in your life and how to control situations. It's called At Your Best. I would love to give 5 copies away. So if you want to enter here on YouTube, just type in the comments below, I'm ready to live at my best. We'll select 5 lucky winners. You guys will get a copy of my latest book. And wherever you're watching, be sure to subscribe, follow, and leave a comment to join the conversation. I really, truthfully hope that you find this helpful. That's why I'm sharing it with you. So now a word from today's partners, and then we'll dive into my conversation with Sean Morgan. Preachers, what if the next time you stepped on stage, you knew your message would be clear, your delivery would be sharp, and your words would stick, right? Sometimes for months or even years. Well, I've got an exciting announcement. On September 22nd, the updated and expanded Art of Preaching course launches. Now, Mark Clark and I built it on the foundation of the original course, but the new version goes way deeper, adds fresh tools, and gives you a proven plan to transform your preaching. It's rebuilt from the ground up. So you'll learn how to get ahead in your sermon prep, how to use humor and storytelling that actually works, how to build a teaching team that's aligned and effective, and even how to leverage AI to make your prep sharper and much, much more. It's a whole new course. So most preaching resources provide inspiration and they don't offer practical skills you need for Sunday morning, or they hand you a formula that worked for someone else or a decade ago, but it might not be a fit for you. The Art of Preaching gives you the insights, strategies, and tools to transform your skill set and develop your gifting. So mark September 22nd on your calendar and get ready for a proven step-by-step roadmap to transform your preaching starting the following Sunday. This episode is brought to you by Convoy of Hope. So mark your calendars and make plans to join me this fall for a very historic event, incredible conference held by my good friends at Convoy of Hope. I'll be at the Convoy of Hope's global headquarters and training center in Springfield, Missouri, November 5th through 7th for the inaugural Hope Summit. It's a gathering of more than 1,200 church and marketplace leaders, and it's going to provide you with a wealth of resources designed to help you have a significantly greater impact in your ministry from neighborhoods to nations. Hope Summit has an amazing lineup of speakers like Chris Hodges and Jenny Allen. I'll be speaking as well. Natalie Grant will be leading worship. And can I tell you, they got a great little coffee shop in that airport at Springfield. Anyway, you can register at hopesummit.com/Carey to take advantage of a special discounted rate. That's hopesummit.com/CAREY, and hope to see you this November at Hope Summit.
Hey, Carey, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast. Always
Sean,
honored to steward parts of your story and all your learning.
Such a joy, man. I just love hanging out with you on or off the air.
Yeah, well, this is a cool season. You got some health back. I think everybody listening has probably paid attention to some of your posts. We're headed into summer, and that's a beautiful feeling. So Yeah, catch us up a little bit, if you don't mind, on health stuff, because it gave me a scare when I scrolled through Instagram, which I do about one day a month, and there was a picture of you in a hospital bed.
Yeah, it was a big surprise for me too. So I turned 60 in March, and it was kind of a big deal. You know, you and I talked about it a little bit, and I had planned, like really spent a very intentional year leading up to my 60th birthday. Where am I at, God? What do you want me to do? And I was feeling really good, like excellent about it. And I thought this was going to be like, I'm getting in the top shape of my life kind of year. I'd been on a fitness journey for 3 months or 3 years, I should say, 3 months, 3 years, was feeling really good. And a month later, I'm in the hospital overnight for the first time since I was, I don't know, 18 months old, getting my tonsils out, or whenever that happened back in the day. It's one of my first early childhood memories. I remember walking down the hall of the hospital and seeing like this TV with a show on. I was like 18 months, 2 years old. I don't think I've been overnight in a hospital since then. So fast forward almost 6 decades, I find myself there really surprised. So the diagnosis that they're still working with that they gave me that day is warm idiopathic hemolytic anemia, which is it took me a long time to memorize that. But basically, but a month around my 60th birthday, I wear an Oura ring, and I just happened to have picked up the latest generation a couple months earlier. So it's got pretty good metrics. And I noticed my readiness score, which is like getting a report card every day, was dropping. Now, we were on a team retreat in Phoenix. I was speaking to leaders in Phoenix, and I'm like, well, you're at a resort, you know, I know what I ordered off the menu, but you don't know 100% what's in the food. And basically your score is a basis of your heart rate variability, your resting heart rate, your oxygen saturation, all the stuff that you would be like totally up to score on that it measures. And then it gives you like a report card out of 100. You got an 82, or you got a 96, or you got a 14 or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's cause and effect, right? Like if you go to bed on time, you eat healthy, you do your workout, you're going to get a good score. You just know you are. And mine dropped. And I'm like, I wonder what that is. But again, you're at a resort, like who knows did they slather the steak in butter? I asked them not to, but maybe they did. I don't know. So anyway, I just kind of wrote it off and thought, I'll dial back when I get home. But I felt fine. And then got home, and it was an ice storm that hit our community. And that's impossible for Americans who are listening. It's like, ice storm, you got ice? It's like, imagine a hurricane went through. Like we lost 70% of the trees in our yard. You've led cohorts in our backyard. Yeah. So literally I've got like guys in the back rebuilding my backyard, planting brand new trees, all that stuff as we record this a couple months later. But I came back to what looked like a war zone. And again, my scores didn't recover. So I'm like, well, you know, I'm pretty stressed. And we had no power for 12 days, no internet for 13, which was almost worse than having no power because I have a generator. Anyway, so that was the case. And then my son and his wife moved back and moved in with us for a little while. And our mutual friend, Mark Clark, came and stayed with me for a week. And, you know, with Mark, there's hot tubs late at night and dinners out and stuff like that. And then we recorded this course in Toronto, The Art of Preaching, which is coming out this fall. And while all this was going on, my scores were not great, but I'm like, well, it's a weird month. It's a weird month. It's a weird month. We had an apocalyptic storm. You know, it got a house full. We're entertaining all the time. But then I noticed I was getting weak and like difficult for me to go up the stairs. Not typical. We were getting landscapers in to try to figure out how to rebuild our backyard and get the crews in to remove all the dead trees and the fallen trees. And, you know, I had to dig out a little patch over a drain in our yard, 15 seconds of spade work, and I had to lean against the spade to catch my breath. I'm like, whoa. So finally, literally the day after Mark and I finished recording the new art, which was weird. We're at the studio in Toronto. I'm giving you the long version. I had difficulty getting up the stairs. It was a 3-floor walk up to the studio, which I've shot courses in before. It's a beautiful studio.
It's that brick building.
A brick building. Jordan Peterson shoots his stuff in there in Toronto, that kind of stuff. So we went up there and, you know, I'm like, whew, I am winded. And I sat down in the hallway for 2 minutes, caught my breath, and then I stood up and I shot 10 hours of video on Thursday, 10 hours of video on Friday, no problem, lots of muscle memory, clear mind. But by the time Mark and I went for dinner after, I'm like, oh, dude, I'm tired. I got to go to bed. It was like 8 o'clock or whatever. So, you know, but got up and did it. And the next day, Mark had other stuff to do. Tony was gone somewhere and it was a crappy day weather-wise. And I thought, I'm going to go into Emerge and just get checked, like just in case. But I probably would have skipped it if it was a nice day and I would have done something else. So I get to Emerge and they're like, well, you don't want this designation, but you are the most interesting patient in the hospital. I'm like, what does that mean? And they're like, oh, it's not good. We're all puzzling over you. They did enough blood work on me to fill Dracula's castle with blood. Like, it was insane. They drew vial after vial after vial. And I'd never heard of a hemoglobin other than maybe in a movie or something like that. And they're like, your hemoglobin is 69. And I'm like, what does that mean? And they're like, well, in a normal male your size, it's 135 to 175. I'm like, so that's bad, right? And they're like, yeah, it's really bad. And they're like, your hemoglobin, your red blood cells, they carry oxygen and nutrients to your entire body. And if you go 10 points lower, I would learn the next day, it's like, welcome to your heart attack or stroke. Like, basically your body stops functioning.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, so this is serious. And I'm like, but I feel okay other than a little bit weak. And they're like, yeah, you should be lying on the couch calling an ambulance. But because you've been working out so much and you're generally a healthy 60-year-old male specimen, you're able to push through all this stuff.
Yeah.
Parable to leaders. There you go. Yeah. And they said, so if you had let this go a little bit more, it could have been really bad. So there's a number of different theories. One is your body stops producing the red blood cells. They did a lot of extensive testing. I'm producing a lot of great red blood cells, but something happened probably in Phoenix, according to my Aura ring, and they took the data fairly seriously as doctors. I had a whole team, like 8 or 9 working on me. And they're like, you get exposed to viruses every day. You get, exposed to a cold or a flu, or you get a spider bite or something like that. Your body fights it off. Your immune system, for some unknown reason, decided red blood cells were bad guys and started destroying them. And over the month, that's why your scores were so low. They were destroying them, and you don't have enough red blood cells. So what they did was they put me on a massive dose of prednisone. And if you know anything,
how many milligrams
we've talked
a day?
about it. 90, dude, 90.
Jeez.
Yeah, every doctor I've talked to or medical person is like, are you kidding me? 90? Like, people get 9. They gave me 90. So that made me clinically, I want to be careful what I'm saying, but I felt insane in hours for certain points of time. Like, it wrecks. Prednisone's a miracle drug. I've learned so much. That was invented in the 50s. Kept a lot of people alive, still keeps a lot of people alive, but it has side effects the length of Wikipedia. Like, it's huge. And so for me, it was like, I take my pills in the morning, and they're starting to taper me as we record this, which is good. So the long story short, TLDR.
Yeah, you can't just go off it because of
apparently
your
not.
adrenals.
No, you're going to kill your body or something. So anyway, they spiked me. I was on that massive dose for 6 weeks. And now we're 8 weeks into this illness as we record it. So the good news is my hemoglobin's almost normal. It's within 2 points of normal. All the other levels are coming back. The therapy is working. We don't know whether it's worked. But now as they reduce the drug, they're going to find out whether my immune system, it's almost like rebooting your computer.
Right.
Like, okay, this time it's going to work and the program's going to open. So after the reboot, as we, get rid of the prednisone from my body, hopefully my immune system is like, oh, red blood cells, you're nice people. We will leave you alone and go fight the bad guys. So that's a theory. And the good news is I'm getting better. The weird part is the drugs were almost worse than the disease.
Like, prednisone in general, but 90 milligrams. Wow.
Yeah, that's crazy. So they're like, I've had great doctors. So, but it's a bit of a reset. You go into 60 feeling so excited, so strong. My wife and kids threw me a surprise birthday party, just some friends and family at my favorite restaurant. It was like epic milestone. And then all of a sudden, whoomp.
Yeah.
Literally 5 weeks later, I'm in a hospital bed, admitted overnight. So
didn't see it coming.
Didn't see it coming, man. Yeah, that'd be a good book title one day, if you could do it. So it looks like I'm going to be okay. It looks like, but it really makes you rethink everything, particularly when they tell you, 10 points more, and that could be the end.
Yeah, because your body is getting no nutrients to even just function at that.
No, your heart won't beat anymore, or you get a stroke. So, and that could be, debilitating, or it could be life-ending, but neither was realized.
So you and I were a couple of phone calls and texts this over week to week sort of stuff. And you had said something to me. Well, I'll tell you something. So Stacy and I were talking, and I was like, yeah, Carey, it's scary for me right now because Carey's in great shape. He takes care of himself, and he's got the ability to push. And like he's just a machine in some ways, like he's the bionic pastor. And so obviously there's that thing, the body keeps score or whatever. And I was like, so I think he could fire up a couple extra cylinders if he really needed to. So he's kind of like in this stage where maybe there's some cumulative effect of things. So Stacey and I were talking about that because I'm in my early 50s now. I just turned, I'm about ready to turn 52. Probably
birthday,
by
buddy.
the time this airs. And I notice, like, I don't have the battery that I used to. And in some ways, it's demoralizing to feel your age. You were talking with your interview with John Eldridge was incredible. You guys talked about how in our culture we worship youth. And I was like, oh, yeah, nailed it. And so I'm like, in some ways it's demoralizing, but I always am a huge fan of, the obstacle is the way. The obstacle is the opportunity thinking. And so it's like, but the opportunity is to focus and to get more out of the things that are most important with some intentionality and all that. And so then you and I were engaging, and you told me, I think you and Craig had connected and you'd gone through some exercises together, and you found 29. What were the category of the 29
I'm glad we're
things?
talking about this, and I'm not glad we're talking about this. Yeah. So 2 weeks before I went to the hospital,
Yes.
we had the year to end all years. There was a lot going on. I'll go into some of that. And I brought Craig Groeschel's book, Winning the War on Your Mind, to this
That's right. Yeah.
all-inclusive. This is, to give you an idea of my life, this is the third all-inclusive I've ever done in my whole life, I think, if I'm counting right. So it's not typical. It was just my wife, Tony, and I went to Curacao, a little island in the Caribbean. And we had the best time. And I was not getting great scores, but I was feeling fine day to day. I had no idea anything was wrong with me. And so I'm reading Winning the War on Your Mind, and I think it's chapter 10. And I reached out to Craig, and I'm like, oh my goodness. He talks about his 2019. I remember seeing him in London. He was speaking at Leadership Conference that year. And I mean, he was just going. He had something like 25 talks in 5 cities. And then stuff was happening at home where I'm paraphrasing here, but there was an animal in the attic and somebody's car broke, and then a rat got into one of his kids' cars. It was just this catastrophe of whatever. And I'm sitting there at the beach because I have trouble unplugging, at the best of times. And I'm reading Craig's book. And then I start taking notes. And I'm like, hey, the last 14 months have been abnormally difficult. And actually, Craig and I share a performance psychologist, performance coach, Dr. Wayne Chappell, who he's writing his new book with. So we're always, back and forth comparing notes. And Dr. Chappell, if you're listening, thank you, is on me about, hey, you're 60, you need to slow down. You're not a rookie NBA player. You're a veteran. You can't have the game points that you used to have. And he knows this, but I'm kind of resisting Dr. Chappell going, I don't know that the rules apply to me. I think we're fine. Leave me alone.
See what I was talking about? Yes.
I think this is the end of our session today, Dr. C. No, but I'm giving him polite pushback, and he's really been helpful to me. So I'm reading chapter 10, and I thought, I wonder if I've had some external stressors in the last. This is internal versus external. So didn't see it coming, and At Your Best. My last 2 books are all about the internal battle of a leader, and I've had honestly a pretty good life. And so as far as external stress, I'm an Enneagram 8. I don't feel it the way empaths do, or a 4 would, or, someone who's got a real shepherd's heart. If I get an angry email, I can usually get over it in about 3 minutes. Or if it's worst case, 3 days. But as I'm reading through chapter 10 of Craig's book, I start to journal, well, how many external stressors have I had? In that case, the timeline was 14 months. It was 29, and it blew me away. Everything from my father-in-law dying to navigating his funeral, which is never easy, to my parents both having significant health challenges, my dad being diagnosed last summer with dementia, moving them out of this beautiful condo they lived for 25 years near the waterfront in Barrie into assisted living, long-term care, not long-term care, but retirement residence with help.
Right.
And, that's not an easy journey. And then I've got 3 sisters that we weren't all in sync every step of the way. At the same time, selling the family cottage that's been in Tony's property where her mom lived for 70 years. And having to declutter my late father-in-law's collection of treasures from the last 80 years, which, by the way, was about 10 tons of stuff. It wasn't hoarders. It was just so much work and so much stress trying to get that family to agree. And there were family dynamics in that. And then, I'd come home from Phoenix and have my entire yard, which is a sanctuary, destroyed by God, by nature, having to rebuild that. Being without power, being without internet. I mean, it just went on. And there were little things on the list too. Not like traffic was slow today. But like even the studio, I finally finished rebooting the studio. I had an old iMac that was crashing all the time. And we had a company sale earlier this year, merger partnership with Glue. So you can't really make any capital purchases at a time like that. So I'm like, I just got to get to the other side of this.
Really stable.
You got to be so stable. And I'm like, okay, finally I can buy a new iMac. Okay, great. And all this stuff. So now I got my dream studio. It all works. Like all the technology works, all that stuff. So as we're recording this, I think I've got 6 ongoing stressors, maybe, of the 29. Everything else is in the rearview mirror. And like, we're not moving my parents to a retirement home again this year. This is like, we did all the research. It's done. This is their spot for the indefinite future. Same with my mother-in-law. Like all that stuff is in the rearview mirror, but all came up at once. And I felt, and I think we talked about this, like I was in the boxing ring and I got a hit to the head and I'm like, that's okay. And then I got a hit to the gut and then another hit to the gut and then another hit to the head. And then I got knocked down and then I got back up and then I got hit again and again and again. And eventually, so around the time of the hospital, this all hits a head. Now, the psychologists say, so the stress caused this. 9 doctors later, they're like, this is not stress related. So maybe that's an issue in heaven. But it even, Sean, I mean, we can go wherever because leaders, I mean, maybe God didn't strike your backyard. I'm kidding. You have an idol and then God takes it away. So you just rebuild it. So that's what we're doing right now. Hopefully this one doesn't get destroyed. But anyway.
That's the first time I've heard you frame up the backyard as an idol.
You know what? It's a sanctuary. And most of us who have been at this for a little while, we have a favorite spot, a favorite chair, a favorite thing that we do that is just kind of like, okay, the world's on fire, but I'm at peace. And for me, that was my backyard.
Yeah, for sure.
It was great.
It's been that for me many times.
Yes, I know. And for lots of leaders who come up here and we hang out. And so now we're rebuilding it, and submitting it to God. It's good. But there was a period where I felt like I was in the book of Job. And I'm like, I just need some boils on my body. And then believe it or not, I got a boil on my body after I got out of the hospital. I'm like, hey, well, I am in the book of Job. But I was processing this with Dr. Chappelle and I'm like, you know what? Like, at least the book of Job ends. Like there's only 42 chapters. That's good. And so I feel like we're toward the end or at the end of the book of Job. And I didn't lose, I lost my father-in-law, but I didn't lose my children. I didn't lose my wife. My house didn't burn down. And there are a lot of people dealing with a lot less. But the point is, when the hits keep coming, what happens? And it got me to the point where the week prior to going in the hospital, I was like, am I burning out? You and I had that conversation. Like we got together in Atlanta in October and I knew something was off. There was a few of us who do what we do that hid in a corner from everybody else there and just kind of had dinner one night because I was at the end of my capacity to have conversations with people I didn't know. It's like, let's just gather the people I know and let's have a good time and that kind of thing. So the cracks were showing, but I'm like, what is this? I didn't know, but I wasn't keeping a running list. Oh yeah, you just had number 13 of 29 that are coming happen this week. So it really did catch me by surprise. But the good news is when you end up in the hospital and there's nothing to do, you realize whether you're stirred up inside or whether you're at peace. And as soon as the cacophony on the outside stopped, I was like, oh, I'm not at war inside. I'm pretty happy. I mean, hopefully I don't die. That would be nice. But
that was the marked difference in that conversation around, is this another form of burnout?
Exactly.
And you were like,
that was like, I was starting to
different.
really entertain that question because I was more emotional. I remember a conversation I had with my kids and my boys, and I just started crying, which is not typical for me. They were putting their arms around me going, Dad, are you okay? And my honest answer was, I don't know. But what I realized was those were external stressors. And when the storm stopped and I got into a hospital room where it was dead quiet, utterly boring with nothing to do, I'm like, God and I are fine. Tony and I are fine. I like my life. I like my calling. Hopefully I get well. Hopefully we figure this out. But I realized, because I know what it is to have the internal storm, that was 20 years ago, where everything on the outside is peaceful, but on the inside, it's dead. It's like, oh no, it's very much alive on the inside. So that was very affirming. And I don't know, I mean, this is a lot about my life, but for leaders, I think, my lesson going forward is I really have to pay careful attention to the external stressors versus the internal stressors. And I think there are definitely seasons in the past and there will be seasons in the future where it's internal turmoil. I'm not a happy guy. I'm not, whatever. I'm not content. I don't know about this. And then there are times where probably over these last 16 months, it was like I was pretty much all external. And, resilience is the ability to get up one more time than you're knocked down. And so, I kept getting knocked down 29 times. And now I'm back up and I'm feeling okay. And if this thing resolves as we think it will, the doctors think it will in the next few months, then it'll be business as usual. But it's a new framework to look at things with. It's I have a lot of empathy for I've never had the mental health, it's like playing pinball in my brain when I'm on that much prednisone. Who I am at 11 a.m. is different from who I am at 11:18. My joke is it's kind of like the White House changes every 20 minutes and it's not normal. That's my interior mind on that drug. And, it's starting, they're tapering my meds now. So it's a little more sane, but I have a lot of empathy for people who have that kind, like we all have good days and bad days, right? You have bad days, good weeks, bad weeks, good seasons, bad seasons, but like every 20 minutes or every 2 hours. And that's not fair. And to the people around you or to anybody. So I have a lot, but now I understand, this is why people reach for alcohol at 2:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
If you're that out of whack, you're like anything to get back to normal. And so for the first 2 weeks of prednisone, they said, you're going to get moon face, you're going to gain weight, you're going to gain a lot of weight. It's just a side effect of the drug. And I told myself, I've worked this hard on my fitness. I'm going to pretend I'm taking Ozempic. I am not hungry.
Yeah.
And I didn't eat, but my mood was out of control. And like I could have been the road rage guy that ends up in some viral video when I'm driving into town if somebody cut me off. And I'm like, this is not me. I showed up to a family function, sat down next to my sister at a restaurant, and the first words out of my mouth as I'm sitting down is, I hate this restaurant. Now, first of all, I don't really hate the restaurant. It's not my favorite, but I don't hate it. And secondly, why would I say that in public? But that was my, and you get canceled for stuff like that if you do that on stage at scale.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, my brain is not working right. And so what I realized is mood and movement, exercise, or food and movement regulates mood for me when I'm on prednisone. So after 2 weeks, Tony was tired of my dog and pony show every day and not knowing what she was going to get. So I said, okay, I'm just going to start obeying the appetite and eating. And my mood got better. Yeah. And I could regulate it better. But, in my case, it was like 4 meals a day, 5 meals a day, and some snacks. But, I didn't turn to alcohol or drugs, but I could see why people do if it's that volatile. So it gave me a lot of, I didn't have any empathy for people who burned out before I burned out in 2006. Now I have a lot of empathy. And I'm always trying to understand, why would you be doing that at 2:00 in the afternoon? It doesn't make any sense. Oh, no, it makes sense to me. I'm not going to do it, but and I can, as they taper the meds, I'm tapering my food and getting back in the gym and on my bike and all that stuff. But gave me a lot of empathy. And then really to realize how fragile this all is, dude. Really how fragile. That was my first, you could die convo.
When you think about, I think you talked about the leadership side of this, the leadership gene comes with a burden. And so you're the person that's convincing people how to excel, how to push further than they would otherwise, go above and beyond. You bring stability in the midst of turmoil. These are all things that leaders do, but there's the shadow side of that too, is what the mantle and maybe the accumulation, because you had things in your past that you'd moved on from. They're in the rearview mirror, but maybe there's aspects of them that you still carry with you. They still have weight. Certainly when you have some huge ones like that on the list of 29. So do you have any conclusions in terms of, I don't know, maybe just the idea of surviving the call of a leader?
Yeah. Well, Dr. Chappelle and I are working on that together. He's in the middle. I haven't talked to him in a couple of weeks. He's in the middle of the NBA finals right now. He's coaching one of the teams that are there. But, he's definitely saying, again, I know nothing about sports, less than all of your other guests combined. I know nothing. But there's some player he coaches who's very famous, has a big contract. I think he's got 2 first names. Is Anthony Paul, is that like no, I don't know who he is. Anyway, he told me numerous times, very famous, but I don't follow sports. So he's like 30 and, he wanted to be in on every play. Like, put me in coach. And that's me. I want to be in on every play. And he's like, yeah, at 30 in the NBA, you can't do that. So when he was coaching him, and he's the performance psychologist, he's like, and he worked with the head coach, and the general manager. And he just said, you're going to sit out, you're going to be bench. You're going to do half your normal game time. And he was dying. Like, this is awful. I hate it. And that's what Dr. C was trying to do with me before all this went down. Yeah. And I'm like, look, I only work 4 days a week, 4.5 days a week. Like, what do you want me to be? Semi-retired? Like, come on. And so I'm giving him appropriate pushback. But what happened with that NBA player is he left the team he was on, became a free agent or something like that, and signed for double his contract the next year because it increased his performance. Doing less increased more. So the dialogue is, we'll pick it up. Welcome to my therapy session. We're in the middle of this right now, okay? But the dialogue the next time I sit down with him is, look, 29 in 14 months is a lot. And 3 or 4 things, like one parent going through something, but like literally 4 parents going through something in a year and having to move 2 family properties and, this, that, and the other thing. And then an unprecedented ice storm and no power and no hydro and the studio's dead and I can't do my job. Like, it is Book of Job-ish. So I would like to pretend that this is a high watermark for stress in my life right now. Like, most leaders could say, hopefully COVID was the high watermark. We're not going to go back there, but we don't know. Yep. And so Dr. C is like, you need to spend a little more time on the bench. And I'm still like, put me in. So what I'm learning though is probably my biggest lesson is you got to stop long enough to know whether it's internal or external stress.
Okay.
You got to, and probably keep a running list. Like, I wasn't very good at this in the moment, because you always think the bad things are an anomaly. It's like, well, I got that one nasty email, but I'm surely there's not going to be one tomorrow, but then there's one tomorrow, and then there's one the day after, and there, yeah, and it was already a bad winter up here. But then the ice storm, it's like, there's not going to be an ice storm, is there? Oh yeah, there's an ice storm, right? So you end up at that place where you're just, you're always responding to things. And I think keeping a running list and going, okay, I got 10 on my active list right now. There's got to be a threshold where if you've got 10 external stressors, I'm thinking in real time here, I haven't really processed this because it's happening. But if there's 10 external stressors on your list, you probably need to book that weekend away, or you need to slam the laptop at 4, not at 6, or you need to build more margin, more sleep, more rest, more processing into your life, because it was coming at me faster than I could really grieve it. Ministry is a series of ungrieved losses. That's one of my mentors, Terry Wardle, what he taught me. And, there was a lot to grieve. Another big lesson for me is, with all the family stuff, I got caught up in some of the family drama, trying to be the firstborn or trying to be the helpful person. And I'm like,
right. With aging parents, there's always somebody that carries that role, right?
Yeah. And I'm like, maybe that's not my role. Maybe I exit the drama faster. Maybe there's some group texts I just leave. Maybe I just don't respond. Like, why does someone else's drama have to be my drama? That was another thing. Because I'm a leader, I'm a fixer, I can fix this. Hey, I advise leaders around the world. Why wouldn't they take my advice? There's a dynamic to process in your family, right?
Totally.
So, trying to figure out all that stuff.
I even feel like there's this thing, leaders handle expectations usually by exceeding them. But expectations are dangerous because they're written and unwritten and stated and unstated, but they're there. So even in that case, I'm projecting your situation on me. There's typically expectations you feel of your siblings. Like I'm the sibling that carries this torch for this leg of the race. And I don't know that that's fair for me to say that my siblings have put on me. I just have put it on myself and felt that because there's that expectation. I wonder in leadership, where does that begin to change? Where I'm okay not meeting expectations of others or helping them change their expectations.
Well, there's another dynamic.
It's scary
too
to even ask that question for me.
No, it is. And I think I'm probably taking a step further back this year than I would have last year. Because, the problem is when you're used to being in charge, and I've only been in charge for the last 30 years. I was senior pastor, CEO of my own company, still the CEO of my own company, all this stuff. Like, I've only ever been in charge, and most of your listeners have only ever been in charge. And when you're only ever in charge and suddenly you're not in charge, like all of that list of 29, I was not in charge of any of that. I didn't orchestrate the ice storm. I didn't orchestrate my parents' health challenges. I didn't orchestrate any of those things. Now, was I involved? Yeah, but I didn't cause them. Secondly, in your family, you're not the boss. And it depends on where you are in the birth order. But, in one family, I'm just the in-law, the son-in-law, the brother-in-law. In another one, I'm just one of four or one of the children. And you don't have the power to hire and fire, and you don't have authority. But you're used to kind of saying something in your church or your company, and it just happens. And then you say it in your family, and the opposite happens. Or you get a lot of pushback, and you're like, well, you don't have a button to push or a lever to pull to make it happen like you do when you're the leader. So, it was a real, and, we've had, disagreements over the years about, well, where will we vacation or what are we going to have for dinner? Big deal. But when you're dealing with existential things like your parents' future and their health, the stakes are higher. So it's more loaded. So I think probably, what I'm thinking about more is could all be over in a heartbeat. Some stuff's worth thinking about, some stuff isn't worth thinking about, some stuff's worth responding to, some stuff isn't worth responding to, and get on with the work. And, the other thing I've done is I want to be more present in the day-to-day. Now I start to sound like a cliche, but when Tony and I went to New York, it was my first trip that I was allowed to make with, the condition I have. And we spent 6 days in Manhattan, and I made sure we went to the good restaurants and we didn't just leave it behind. When I was picking a Broadway show to surprise her with, I picked one of her favorite actors. It was a higher ticket price. It's like, I'm just buying the ticket. We're going to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to enjoy it more because otherwise I'd be like, oh, we'll be back in New York again in a year or two and we'll do it then. And I'm going to bring my laptop and I'll get working on this new book and I'll get this done. And now it was like, I'm just going to really enjoy you.
That's awesome. That's sweet sounding.
Yeah. But I don't know, what do you think? What do you see? Because you've been a good friend in this. You also find out what friends really track with you. And you've been one of those friends who tracks with me. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, I think for me, I would go back to what Stacy and I talked about when we found out you were in the hospital was just like your ability to create and keep a pace it's 12 out of 10. We got to hike Half Dome, and you put in for a lottery and all that stuff. And if you get selected, then they give you a date, and that's the date you have to hike Half Dome. We did it. We invited some friends and
glad
some
you didn't
really
invite
cool
me.
friends.
You outpaced me on that one. I've done hiking with you. You're intense, dude.
So some friends of ours flew out from New Hampshire, and they were killer on the trail. But all day long, they're just very positive people in general. And one of them's an orthopedic surgeon, which is a great skill to have as an orthopedic surgeon.
Especially if you get injured. Yeah.
Yes. From
he's right here.
Being a patient.
You bring your knife?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they were so positive, and they kept saying, this trail's a 12 out of 10. And we've brought that into our vernacular because it just made us pause to go, there's exceptional beauty in all sorts of things that we encounter. And if you just say, oh, that's beautiful and move on, or I've seen stuff like that before, it's like, no, like there are things that just, they are 12 out of 10s. And I know mathematically that doesn't work, but they are.
No, you know, and part of your personality, it's weird. Tony's joking about it now that the danger seems to be passing. But I was only in the hospital for 3 days. I think it went in on Saturday morning. They released me Tuesday morning. And I mean, I was like suitcase packed, ready to go at the door, you know, and they're like, you can go. I'm like, okay, great. But there were a couple of things I did that looking back at it are kind of laughable, but you only do what you know in the moment. First thing was they put that stupid blue hospital gown on, your yellow one. And I don't know what it's covering, and I'm not very comfortable.
Not much.
No, not much. Not nearly enough. Okay, not nearly enough. And they also were looking for an empty bed to admit me, and I got a bed that first day, but they put me on a floor with a lot of people who were 30 years older than me, a lot of dementia patients, and I'm like, do you guys have something else to tell me here? Like, is this a hint? Like, I got more than just the anemia? Like, what's going on? So anyway, but they had like, it's the only floor in that hospital that had like an outdoor terrace and nobody was using it. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to go sit there. And then I said to Tony, bring my laptop. So she brought my laptop. And then I said, hey, do I have to wear, like, I'm just getting like an IV. I'm not hooked up on wires. Can I just wear a t-shirt and shorts? Because it was so hot in there because the patients were older. They're like, yeah, that's all right. You don't have to wear a hospital gown. So all of a sudden, within 24 hours, I'm walking around in street clothes. And I've got my laptop and my work bag that I take with me everywhere I travel. And between the terrace and an area at the end of the hall with a chair and a desk, I've set up an office and I'm working from the hospital. And the joke among the nurses is, and people are coming in to see me, they're bringing me coffees, are like, who is this guy? And is he a patient? Like, what is he doing here? And I'm like, no, I'm running my company from the hospital. What else are you going to do? Lie there? Like, and so you are who you are and you are that wiring. And I wasn't harming my recovery because otherwise I'm going to lie in a bed and watch Netflix. So, I'm doing what I know how to do. And, so you're still who you are. And yet you're also trying to take notes for the future about what 20% might need to change.
Yeah, it's crazy. What would you say if someone were to say the 14 months that you went through leading up to that, and even the couple of months since? So what is that? 16 months. Like, what would be leadership learnings, advice for leaders? Not lifetime stuff, but just like this pretty recent, like based on the last 15 months.
You can only take so many hits. Doesn't matter how strong you are. I get why a lot of people thought about quitting or left during COVID. And there our world is hardly stable right now. Note.
Yeah.
There might be more coming. And you can only take so many hits. And these didn't take me out, but they made me more unstable than I've been in the last 20 years. And that's somebody who probably wrongfully prides himself on being resilient and strong. And like, if it had kept going, I don't know what would have happened. People make terrible moral decisions. There wasn't anything active in my life that leads me to think that would have been there, but who knows? Or you just quit. You're just like, all right. Or you become a shadow of your former self, or you limp. I had that hard reset in the hospital. And I'm like, oh, if I can get physically better, then I can probably get emotionally better. And probably these 29 things aren't going to continue forever. But if I end up with a list that goes past, I'm picking arbitrary numbers here, 6 or 10 ongoing external stressors, I probably need to make adjustments to my schedule and my pacing that allow me sufficient recovery time. LeBron James, I remember interviewing Rob Pelinka on my podcast from the Lakers. And he was saying, he's worked with LeBron and also worked with Kobe Bryant. Those are two sports people I actually have heard of. And they focused as much on prehab as rehab. And I think that's a lesson I haven't forgotten from Rob. Like prehab is this idea that kind of what Dr. C was doing with that NBA player whose name I can't remember. Like, no, you're going to rest. So when you go in, you come in strong. And there's a certain point, to your point, where you started, at 52 or me at 60, where, yeah, I haven't got the energy of a 30-year-old. I have the energy of a 60-year-old, maybe, top 20% 60-year-old health-wise or something like that. But it is limited, and that's going to change what Eldridge was saying about the different seasons of your life, right? So I have to adjust my expectations accordingly. Now, I am working on a new book, which is going to go to market, we think sooner rather than later. And like, I am jacked and I'm energized and I'm pumped about it. So we'll see if that hits the market or not. But like, I've still got my chops, but the chops are different.
When you talked about keeping better track of the internal and external stressors, that really resonated with me because Rich Velodis gave me some insight. I'm a 3-wing 4 on the Enneagram, and you just, especially being in the military and being in 4 different combat tours, you just kind of go, well, it doesn't really matter how you feel. This is what has to be accomplished.
Yeah, you got to fly into this city and do this, right? Like, and I think leadership's like that. That's a good analogy.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely what leaders have to do. Like, this is what's required. So you compartmentalize. And I can tell you, we just had a really sad loss of life with a crash in India this week. And you want your pilots to be able to compartmentalize certain things and focus on what they're doing to the best of their ability in the cockpit in the moment. But I can tell you as a leader, long-term compartmentalization probably falls under more like repression, where you set it aside and stuff it away and bury it and try not to think about it. That's actually probably really unhealthy as a leader. But to be honest with you, I don't know of any leaders that got good training, myself included, on how to compartmentalize for the moment and not really stuff it away and try to forget about it. One of the things that's helped me is what I learned from Rich, and he's probably a mutual friend. I don't know.
Yeah, I know Rich. Yeah.
Is I spent my life like kind of just telling myself it doesn't matter what you feel. Like, just figure out what you have to do and move on. And so in my quiet time daily, and I don't know that I do it daily, but I try to do it daily with significant amounts of time. It's not 5 or 10 or 15 or even 20 minutes. Like, it's an hour, it's 90 minutes. Is start out with just like, what are the things that I'm thankful for? I'm just going to spend 3 to 5 minutes just mentally going through that. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, how am I feeling and why? And then the third thing is God have a word for me and sort of meditation on that. But that second point, how am I feeling and why? I started doing about 2 years ago. And I can tell you, never before in my life have I ever really spent any time answering the question. I was so bad at it, Carey. I had to download on a website emotional feelings chart. It's in a big color wheel, and print it up. And I have it in my Bible so I can get it out and go, like, I'm so bad with being in touch with my own emotions and why. Why am I feeling a little twinge of stress? Because I spent 49 years stuffing it away and just figuring it out. And I don't think that's good.
What difference has it made for you?
I'm way more of a person of peace in general, which it's a fruit of the spirit. So I think it's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's like, I would say I am way more focused. Going through that exercise daily has really helped bring focus with things that I want, and people I want to be around more or less, environments, tasks, or maybe talked about expectation, expectations that I could feel building that no one's named, but I'm realizing it's there and I can address it and go, I don't want that expectation on my shoulders. I think a great tenet of leadership is leadership comes with enough you have to carry on your shoulders. And one of them is with expectation setting and team building and delegation is this idea of do not carry on your shoulders what should be on the shoulders of others. I think leaders who survive 40 years plus in leadership do that really well. And I've been fortunate enough to be around people who I think do that exceptionally well.
You know, it's interesting. I'm so glad you shared that, and good for you. I'd say prior to my first burnout, I was learning to grieve my losses because I was like you. For the first 40 years, it's just like, just keep it coming. I'm fine. Doesn't hurt. It's great.
Yeah.
Let's go. And then it all imploded on me, and that's where all the internal stuff came, and that was my burnout back in 2006. And since then, I've really paid attention to what Terry Wardle taught me. I referenced earlier, grieve your losses, grieve your losses. But normally for me, losses have come in sequence with gaps. In other words, somebody you really cared about died. I remember in 2017, I did like 3 funerals and 2 close personal losses within 2 months of each other. And that was a tough summer. That was a really tough summer. But I had the margin to grieve it, right? And then you kind of get on with it and you move through. And still once in a while, there's a tear with 1 or 2 of those people who passed, you know, but it feels processed. I think what was different about these last 14 months was they were coming so fast. There wasn't time in sequence to grieve it. It's like, oh, I got hit again. Well, yeah, okay, I'm going to grieve. Oh, there it is again. Okay, all right, yeah. Oh, I haven't even dealt with that one yet. And it was 29 and 14 months. Like, just do the math. That's like 1 every 2 weeks. And some of them were really deep. And some of them are ongoing, like dad has dementia and mom has congestive heart failure. And, you know, so these are not going away. And so it was one of those things where you really want to process it. And I would agree. So Dr. C, this is our next session in therapy where I needed more time to process, and I probably needed to step on the brake more than I did. Because had I grieved them in sequence, it would have been better. Unfortunately, there was a hard stop and a lot of them moved to the rearview mirror and we got through it. But yeah, you just are not designed. Like the book of Job, it's just 2 or 3 chapters of events and then 38 chapters of processing and then a really cool chapter at the end, right? Yeah. Or whatever the math is in that book. Yeah. It's not like 42 chapters of events. It's all processing. And a lot of it was bad processing. In fact,
totally, right? Friends.
I actually agree with Job's friends, and they're all wrong. They're all wrong. But I read it and I'm like, no, that's a good point. No, that's a really good point. That's a good point. What did you do? Is there any sin in your life, Job? Like there must be some unconfessed sin.
Yeah.
And, you know, and God's like, nah, that's not it. So if you think about it, right, there's that little bit of action and then there's all that processing. So for leaders who are going through it internally or externally, it's like that processing time is a lifeline. And if you don't, and a sabbatical isn't going to do it because that's 6 years away. And your summer vacation is supposed to be for your family or for some rest. So you got to process it in real time.
Amen. Yeah.
You know, so I don't know how to do that with that much in the future, to be honest with you. If there's 29, I don't know. But I think one field note is I've got to spend some extra time processing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I wonder if that's what undid so many leaders 5 years ago.
I think so.
It was just everything at once. Everything all at once, like that movie, which I haven't seen.
Yeah, don't.
Is it not good? I don't know. Don't know sports, haven't watched 99.9% of all movies. So
yeah, you won't miss it. I think this idea of, I wrote down margin to grieve it and processing. That might be one of the most understated skills in leadership. And I'm actually working on a book with like facets of leadership. It's just going to be like 2 or 3 pages on key topics of leadership. And this is one of them. The margin to process something. I coach a lot of leaders that are in transition to become the lead pastor of a church. And so it's a big step for them. Some of them have maybe planted a church before or have been a lead pastor, but 95% of them probably have not been lead pastors before. It's a huge, whether the church is big or not, it's a huge role.
And you have a lot to process in that seat.
You do. And one of the key things that I helped him understand is building margin into daily life from now on. Like, because like you just said, you shouldn't spend your vacation recovering from things that the leadership of the church has caused you to carry. You're robbing from your family, so you've got to figure out a rhythm where it's a sustainable rhythm going on and building margin. And I always tell leaders, it's not just white space on your calendar, but it is that too, is you need 20% more than you've had before. Like what got you here on the team will not get you there leading the team. And one of the keys is margin. And you're going to need 20% more. And then there's a phrase I say, see if I can get it right here. It's been a while since I used it, which is the moment you give your margin away will be the precise time when your organization demands more from you.
I have this saying, which I've never published, but I think I can say it on your podcast. Like, think about funerals and crises. Death is never convenient. I've never in 30 years had somebody pass away at a convenient time. It's like, perfect, great. I got nothing on the calendar. It's always inconvenient. And so, well, now you got the funeral and the hospital visit and the family and the sermon and your kid's soccer game and you got this and you got that. And it's like, that's just the life of a leader, right?
Yeah. And the capital campaign in 10 months.
Where you're a little bit short still. So, roll up your sleeves. Yeah. And I think having that kind of margin is so important, and probably you need to create more. The other thing too, which we haven't even tapped on, is creativity always happens in the margins.
There you go.
Right? Like, I was trying to put together a chapter in the book today, and I noticed I was in the shower longer than I normally am, and I'm like, I got to get to writing, and had a classic shower thought where I'm like, oh, right, this goes here, and then that goes there, and then you need to say this, and it came together. So we know from brain science, why does that happen? Because I'm not sitting at a keyboard. Your brain is in passive gear. So when you're on a bike ride, on that hike, you're going to have a breakthrough idea when you're not trying to have the breakthrough idea. Now, you need to sit behind your keyboard, but all the creativity comes from the margin. And so if you really want, an excellent sermon series next year, or you want to have that breakthrough idea, that doesn't come by doing back-to-back-to-back-to-back meetings. I'll tell you one gift.
You're reactionary.
Here's another lesson.
Yeah.
I get a lot of book requests and proposals, and will you write the foreword, and will you do this, and will you do that, and speaking requests. And, I'm honoring every commitment I can. I had to cancel a couple of commitments because I was in the hospital or not allowed to travel by the doctors. But I'm like, if I make a commitment, I'm in. But what I've been doing, and it's really convenient right now, when all those requests come in and we get multiples a week, it's like, actually, I'm busy recovering from this condition. I'm taking on no extra work at this time. And just like saying no to pretty much everybody. And it's very liberating. Now, I'm going to get better at some point, but does that change my filter level? And part of me feels guilty because I'm going to ask other people to help me with stuff in the future. But, if you lead a large or demanding organization, there's a level of no that you have to be really comfortable at. And I can take it. Like, I've asked Craig Rochelle, we mentioned him earlier, to help me out with one or two projects, or will you do this together? And he'll be like, you know what, I'm going to take a pass on this one. And that's great. It doesn't impact the friendship. We still do.
Yeah, you can't be offended by that.
You can't be offended by it.
Staying focused.
It's okay for me to have other people say no to me, but it's not okay for me to say no to other people. So, and I know I wrote about that in At Your Best. I got a whole chapter on all of that, the categorical decision-making thing. But I think I have to probably take my categorical decision of what I do and don't do. Because at the end of the day, I just want to help people. I want to be a nice guy. But it's that eats up your margin. It's like, well, I said I was going to endorse it, but in this day, I have to read every book I endorse. And that means that's a 7-hour prospect for 2 lines that may or may not appear on the book jacket. And so you want to parcel those out in the right way. On the other hand, I was a first-time author and people endorsed my book who shouldn't have endorsed my book. So, it's that tension of leadership where you're trying to figure that out in real time, but margin, a lack of it is going to kill your creativity. And I think in the age of AI, you're going to need more margin to process the rapid change that's going on, to come up with the right responses, to figure out what the strategy is. So yeah, I'm probably going to need more margin.
Best books for that? You have any?
There's a book by Richard Svensson written over 20 years ago. You're going to get pagers and fax machines in it, but the principles are really good. It's called Margin. Excellent. Anything from Cal Newport, from Slow Productivity to Deep Work, really good. Yeah. Essentialism, Greg McKeown, excellent book. I mean, it's dated now. They've updated it, but the 4-Hour Workweek, Tim Ferriss, it's more hacks. Yeah. That's more a strategy book than anything.
Right.
Those are some good books. Juliet Funt has some good material. She's got a book called A Minute to Think. Jordan Rayner has written Redeeming Your Time. There's a lot of books in that space. It's the ability to execute. And the hardest part, and again, I wrote about this in my book on that subject, At Your Best, but I have to recalibrate this every 6 months. This conversation is me recalibrating my theory for this season of life. And it's diminished capacity. That's what I had when I was sick. It's probably, I might increase impact, but I can't increase capacity.
Yeah.
5 years from now, from what it is today, we know what the odds are on that. The long game is at 70, you're not going to be quite as strong and energetic as you were at 60, as you were at 40, as you were at 20. So, you know where the trajectory is going. On the other hand, I want to be the best version of 60 or 70 or what's ahead that I can be.
You talked about diminished capacity. Obviously, that makes a lot of sense.
It's depressing to say out loud.
But let me ask you something totally different than the capacity thing. In the time that you've had diminished capacity, how have your relationships been with Tony and the boys?
Other than the crazy meds, amazing. The one thing I really debated, because I wasn't going to say anything publicly, I'm like, oh gosh, just let this thing pass. So I'm lying in the emergency room and realizing, well, actually, I'm supposed to fly out tomorrow and go to Seattle and speak at an event and then go to California direct after that. I got to tell these guys something. So I did, and we just let them know, hey, I'm so sorry, surprise admission to the hospital, not sure what's going on. Can't make the conference, feel terrible about it. But I wasn't going to say anything on social media. And the next day I kind of woke up and I'm like, well, I woke up in a hospital. I think I better say something. There's a lot of people who have been very nice to me. And so I just did that post, which, you saw and lots of other people saw. And the response of the church was unbelievable. I was not ready for how much kindness, how much goodness, how many prayers, how many texts, how many DMs, how many people were genuinely, honestly, authentically concerned. And the number of people who have tracked, people who are way too busy to track, who have tracked with me, lots of people I know, lots of people I don't know. So it made me incredibly grateful for people. And that was true, like doctors that, because I've been in the same community for 30 years. Some of the doctors who weren't on my case came in their off hours because they were Christians or involved in our church or another church, just to sit with me and kind of give me their perspective on what was happening. I was overwhelmed relationally. And I also realized at the end of the day, that trip to New York City, Tony and I had 3 days where it was just us. And I'm like, no, I'm going deep with you, girl. Come on, let's go. And that's true with friends too. We had Father's Day recently here. We're recording this in June. It was 8 hours with my youngest son, sometime tonight with my oldest, and just really, really, and treasuring my team, treasuring the people around me. Dunbar's number, that inner circle of 3 to 5 friends.
Yeah.
Just really, really treasuring that. And at the end of the day, it's relationships and your character that matter the most. And so I really want to focus on that. But I still want to work.
Yeah.
I love what I do.
Yeah. I do love what I do. And let's shift gears a little bit, because I was thinking about that. This is more of a Succession thing. We have a big Succession audience tracking with us. how important was having something you loved to do to go to, even though that's changed a lot, what your organization looks like today and what it looked like at the time of transition with Brody is different, but you had something there. You had vision, you had inspiration, you had something. How important has that been to you?
It's huge. I mean, that was part of my getting ready to turn 60 reflections for a year. And I thought about, a lot of my friends are retiring. And the question is, do you have any grandkids? Nope, we don't. One day, maybe. We don't know. But if you look at how our culture approaches life, you're supposed to reach a certain stage where theoretically, in some magical economy that doesn't exist, you have enough money that you don't need to work anymore. And I know this is a pastoral audience, so I'm not trying to rub salt into an open wound. But, the idea is you don't work anymore, and then you move into consumption mode. So it's endless beaches, endless vacations, and literally a week before I landed in hospital, we're on the beach at my third all-inclusive in Curacao, all the stereotypes. Like it's just, beaches and palm trees and ocean, and it was amazing. We had a great time. And I'm like, a week is plenty. Right. And Tony agrees. And so I've been thinking about that. And my metaphor is, I think we were designed to consume in small quantities. It's like food. Eat healthy, enjoy your meal. But, at some point, shut up and move on, right? You're done this meal, move on. And so take a vacation, enjoy your backyard, go for a bike ride or whatever. But we're not designed to do endless vacations. And now, in our culture on social media, people, 30 years ago, people took one vacation a year. Now they take 18, and the retirement is, and then we're in Croatia, and then we went to France, and then we did this, and we did a private, and we did this, and we did that. And I'm like, like you can only lie on a beach for so long. So for me, where the joy is not in consumption. I do enjoy consuming in moderation. It's in contribution. And I think God designed us to create. He designed us to contribute. And so what I want to do in the next 20 years is I want to contribute. And if I can contribute to the dialogue, if I can contribute to the things that help the church in its mission, that help leaders, that is a greater joy than lying on the beach forever. I'll go once or twice a year and lie on the beach. We have a vacation coming up this summer where go to this little cabin an hour north of us and drive our boat for a week. But a week's plenty. Get a couple of doses. I take generally 6 weeks a year where I'm kind of in non-work mode. And at this point, at 60, that's plenty. I don't need more. Maybe I'll say differently at 65 or 70. Maybe my health will change. I don't know. Someone else's health will change, but that's enough. Yeah. And I want to contribute. So what does contribution look like? For, one of the big issues you and I have talked about, we deal with in our course is, a lot of guys in my position, they don't want to leave because they can't imagine not contributing or they need the salary. But on the other hand, contribution can look like a million different things. It can be a Zoom call for free for pastors. It could be meeting somebody down the road for coffee. It could be, writing a book that maybe sells 1,000 copies. That's fine. You helped 1,000 people. That's great. It's not a New York Times bestseller. So what? Like contribution can be redefined according to season and stage. And so you just got to look at that. And Tony and I, we're pretty tight on we want to be contributing into our 80s or however many years God gives us. And one day that may not be paid. That's fine. It's fine.
Well, and I love that contribution looks different in different stages too. And, you interviewed Eldridge and he talked about the king stage, the sage stage. And, it's like the word retirement isn't in the Bible. The picture of doing nothing isn't really in the Bible outside of a day of rest and maybe some Sabbath type thing.
Well, and that's where Arthur Brooks and John Eldridge come together. If you look at his different stages around this age, Arthur Brooks would date it after 40. That's where he moved from fluid to crystallized intelligence, this idea of wisdom. And one thing, and it's funny, I've told Arthur, like I found that at 42, I still remember the season where, my 30s, I burned out at 41. My 30s were rapid growth years. We had 15 to 30% growth year after year after year, which is just amazing and exhausting. But everything seemed random. The relational patterns seemed random. The weirdness seemed random. The church scandals seemed random. Scandals, there weren't scandals, but where somebody's mad at you about something or an elder resigns or whatever. I don't even think we had elders resigning, but someone wanted to fire. But anyway, that's another story for another day. But you know what I mean? Just the day-to-day of leadership where you got to fire a staff member, but it all seemed random. And then at 42, I remember somebody going, yeah, we're leaving the church. And I'm like, oh, well, that's exactly like what happened with this person and that person and this person. And I started to connect the dots and I would see the pattern. And basically, if you were to see me at a party and say, what do you do? Sometimes I tell people I connect dots. That's all I do. I just sit down and I'll look for the common denominator and I'm like, oh, that connects to this, connects to this. That started for me less than 20 years ago. And Arthur Brooks says that's actually the function of how we develop as human beings, that our brain does different things that move from crystallized to fluid to crystallized intelligence. And Eldridge would make the same thing, right? He'd make the same argument. He'd be like, no, at 60, you shouldn't be, right? Like in sports, you're the player, you're the rookie, you're the all-star, and then you're the player coach, and then you're the coach. And you need to get into that coach phase. And I think those of us who've been through a few laps, we can maybe coach younger leaders, which is what I love doing, to avoid some pitfalls and, go further faster, as they say.
Along those lines of learning along the way, sage, Yoda wisdom, I'm going to throw a quote at you and just love for you to process this in terms of wisdom along the way, things you see now that you didn't see 10, 20 years ago. It's Henry David Thoreau, and it says, I don't think this is actually a hard quote. I think it's a summary of some of his words, but many men go fishing all of their lives without knowing that it's not a fish thereafter.
It's funny. I read a lot of Thoreau last year. Yeah. I mean, my reflection, this is where my mind goes, is, you can chase growth as a young leader. You can chase size. You can chase the Outreach 100 list. You can chase, whatever your title is. You can chase podcast downloads. You can chase whatever. But I think at the end of the day, what I'm really chasing is meaning, significance, love, affection, relationship. And it's funny, the thing you think is going to get you there actually pushes that stuff away. The harder you achieve. I mean, Thoreau lived in a really tiny cabin, probably not quite the size of my office. And, everyone thinks he was way in the wilderness. He was only a couple miles from town. And he would entertain visitors and so on, but he would see the striving, and he found it really hard to move back into town after he abandoned because he saw, the railroad had come and everything mid-19th century America. And so Thoreau was that interesting character who kind of saw it and then couldn't quite. I wonder if, sometimes if that's what happened to Vincent van Gogh, is he saw so clearly. We went to the Met and saw more original Van Goghs. Wow. We've seen a bunch of them. And the guy was geniusly talented. But if you read his letters are published on the internet to his brother Theo. And he really saw deeply into human desire. And there's a certain point at which the psyche just disconnects and says, I can't live in this rat race. And so, fortunately, I think God has done better than cutting off your ear and committing suicide in Van Gogh's case, or Thoreau, he really didn't embrace Christianity. God has done a lot better in giving us the gift of each other and the gift of his son, Jesus. And I think that is where our contentment, I spent some time with some of Keller's team in New York and just reflecting on his legacy and interviewing another one of his biographers for my podcast. And that's someone, the deeper I go on Keller, the more I realize two things. Number one, he had a real friendship with God. A real friendship with God. He really considered Jesus to be his friend, which is weird because he's so intellectual. But the second thing is, and this is what nobody really knows about Tim, or I didn't know about Tim, is, we say his legacy lives on in his preaching and his books. True. But you can't spend 10 minutes at a church leaders conference in New York without some next-gen church leader bringing up Tim's name and saying, Tim used to have coffee with me. Tim had me in one of his cohorts. I was in one of Tim's seminaries class. He would come over from Roosevelt Island and answer questions till 11 o'clock at night with a group of pastors I was discipling. His fingerprints are all over that next generation of leaders in New York City. So when you think about the legacy that Tim Keller left, it exists on the pages, but it really exists in the people. And so when I think about that Walden quote, I think about all the stuff you're chasing is actually the chase to find what you're really chasing. And when you really find it, then perhaps you'll be satisfied, but it's not what you think it is.
Yeah. So good. So good. Well, Carey, this has been maybe my favorite podcast interview. This was super rich.
Well,
we didn't
know
have
what
much
we're gonna talk about,
structure,
man.
We didn't know. We're
I
just
texted you this morning and I said, you can talk about my health. That's fine. So here we are. No, but it feels like dinner, man. It feels like just conversation or in the backyard or at the fireplace or fire pit or whatever. No, this has been really, really enjoyable for me too. Thanks for permission just to talk and consider and reflect. I hope it's been helpful to other people. I've enjoyed it.
Hugely helpful just being a part of this. And I'm overjoyed to think about people that we get to share it with. And I'll let you know what I hear back. And hopefully you'll hear some things too from some of our listeners. That This is really rich. Thanks for your friendship. I really appreciate it. You know, the older I get, and this is actually one of the presenting issues, Dr. Chappelle, when I started working with him maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we've really been working on that inner circle of Dunbar's number, those 3 to 5 friends, those 10 to 15 friends who know you well. And one of the things I so appreciate about your friendship is we just pick up where we left off, and there's no, and we talk about everything. We talk about this, we talk about work, we talk about podcasts, all of that. And so I'm just really grateful for you, man, and bummed we didn't get to hang out in Davis because I was in the hospital, but looking forward to the next time. Absolutely. Yep. I say, you know, I've gotten to know Carey over the years, and he's one of my best friends now, and just love the joy of that statement, and that it's mutual, and also that we both just get to do such inspiring work with, like you talk about, relationship. We're in relationship with people we respect profoundly.
I sit in the back row taking notes. It is. That was another thing since the hospital is like, I have these moments regularly, but how did this become my life? Like, this is pretty amazing, God. Like, wow. Like, just in awe. And you don't want to lose that because you have bad days. You have days where you can make stupid decisions and regret it. But like, it's not bad. And if you have the margin to really reflect on that, I think most of us will realize it's better than we think it is.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, man.
Such great stuff. Honored to have you. Thank you.